Hello, my name's Odessa. During a family trip to Palm Springs, they told me to sit at my own table. I thought it was just tradition, but a few days later, every investor in our company pulled out, without warning. The dinners I wasn't invited to, the meetings I wasn't told about, the polite smiles that hid something much colder. Was this really about family? Or was it always a setup to erase me, quietly? I kept asking myself, how did I go from co-founder to ghost? And why? Did no one stop it? I had told myself this trip would be different. Palm Springs in the summer wasn't everyone's idea of a relaxing getaway, but the resort Thayer's parents picked was immaculate. Whitewashed stone, saltwater pools, soft jazz humming through hidden speakers. Every towel folded with surgical precision. It was a kind of curated perfection that dared you to be out of place. And maybe this time, I wouldn't be. Thayer had said it'd be a chance to reconnect, that his parents were trying with me. I wanted to believe him. I packed light. I even brought the dress Callista once complimented in passing, though her tone made it sound more like critique. When we arrived that afternoon, the desert air shimmered with heat. The valet took our bags, the front desk manager greeted us like old friends, and I followed the family into the resort's glassy coolness, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this time I wouldn't feel like a guest in my own marriage. By the time we reached the rooms, it was past 5 p.m. We'd barely unpacked when Callista tapped on the door and said dinner reservations were for 6:30. I changed, took a breath, and told myself, smile. You're not the enemy here. The patio restaurant glowed in sunset gold. Tables lined the edge of a manicured garden, with string lights swaying gently above. I walked alongside Thayer, scanning the large round table already half filled with Everett, Juno, and the rest of the family. I stepped forward to take the empty seat beside Thayer when Callista raised her hand. "Oh, there must be a mix-up," she said lightly, gesturing to the waiter. "She prefers quiet. Can we set her just over there?" I blinked. She? As if I weren't standing right there. The waiter looked confused, but nodded, guiding me to a smaller table a few feet away, beautifully set for one. I looked at Thayer. He gave a tight shrug. It's just how we do things. I waited for him to realize how it sounded. He didn't. No one said a word to me during dinner. They laughed, passed plates, refilled glasses. At one point, Everett made a joke about Juno's ex-boyfriend, and even Callista laughed. I pushed my fork around my plate, slicing salmon I didn't want, pretending not to care. After dessert, I lingered longer than necessary, hoping someone might notice. No one did. We returned to our rooms just after 8:30. The air had cooled, but my skin still felt hot. I didn't speak, neither did Thayer. He kissed me on the cheek and went straight into the bathroom. I stood by the window, arms crossed, staring at the perfectly lit courtyard. I told myself to breathe. It's just one dinner, I thought. Maybe tomorrow will be different. Morning came fast. I woke before the sun fully rose, dressed quickly, and checked the itinerary I'd been given. Except, of course, there was none. I assumed we'd all go down together, like any normal family on vacation. At 7:40, I texted Thayer. "Are we heading to breakfast?" No reply. I waited another 10 minutes, then decided to go look. Maybe they were still getting ready. Maybe I was being paranoid. The restaurant was already buzzing when I got there. I scanned the space. Empty tables. Then, tucked near the back patio, I saw them. Callista sipping coffee, Everett with a newspaper, Juno mid-bite, already laughing at something Thayer had said. I approached slowly. "Why didn't anyone tell me you were coming down?" Callista didn't even glance up. "We figured you'd join if you felt like it." Everett said nothing. Juno looked at me, her face flush, guilty. Thayer just stabbed at his eggs. My mouth felt dry. I swallowed hard, nodded. "Of course." I turned and walked away before anyone could say another word, though I knew none of them would. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone screen. No reply from Thayer. No updated schedule. No clue what came next. I whispered, not to anyone in particular. Maybe not even aloud. It's not a mistake. It's a system. I stayed in the room the rest of the morning. The sun rose higher, pouring soft light across the tile floors, but I didn't move much. I sat by the window, sipping coffee that had gone cold, and tried not to let the silence feel like confirmation. It was nearly noon when I got a text from the front desk. My spa appointment was ready. I had forgotten I even had one. Part of me wanted to cancel. Another part, maybe the part that still craved structure, grabbed my robe, slipped on sandals, and went. The massage was gentle, the oils expensive, the technician polite. It was exactly what people call relaxing, and yet I spent most of the hour trying to keep my jaw from locking shut. By the time I returned to my room, it was just after 4. My skin smelled faintly of lavender. I thought I might take a nap, let the last of the tension fade. But when I pulled out my phone, instinct made me open Instagram, and that's when I saw it. Juno had posted a photo, candlelit terrace, white tablecloths, Thayer at the center, grinning across the table at Claire, our biggest investor, along with 2 more from the board. Everyone looked so warm, so pleased with themselves. Everyone but me, because I wasn't there. I froze, staring at the screen. I checked my texts. Nothing. My email. Empty. I scrolled again, thinking maybe it was from another night, but the timestamp was clear. Tonight. 6:42 p.m. I hadn't even known they were meeting, let alone pitching. My pulse ticked up, slow but sharp. I set the phone down, stood up, then sat back down, unsure what to even do with my hands. Thayer came in around 9. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, and he smelled faintly of wine and citrus. He didn't say much at first, just loosened his watch strap and toed off his shoes like it was any other evening. I didn't look at him, just said, "Dinner go well?" He hesitated, then gave that vague little shrug he always used when lying wasn't quite necessary, but honesty felt inconvenient. "It was kind of last minute. You seemed like you needed rest." I turned toward him slowly. "You pitched to Claire." He scratched his neck. "It wasn't a formal thing, just ideas tossed around." "You used my eco model," I said, voice flat. "Claire liked it," he said, like that made it okay. I didn't respond. I didn't trust myself to. He went into the bathroom after that. I sat there in the quiet again, my reflection dim in the window. About an hour later, my phone buzzed. A message from Claire. Claire. "Hey, just to confirm, did we already implement that update to the resource model?" I stared at it for a few seconds. The eco model was mine. The update schedule was mine. I had led the data science on it for months. I typed back, "Not yet." I didn't know we were discussing it tonight. There was a pause. Then came her reply. "Ah, I see. Just that." 3 words. But something shifted. Claire wasn't stupid. She had just seen a problem, and I had just seen it too, clearly, unmistakably, for the first time. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was architecture. Later that night, I ran into the family in the lobby. I wasn't trying to, just heading down to get a bottle of water. But there they were, lounging in low chairs, like royalty on break. Callista glanced up and smiled, all syrup and lipstick. "We had such a productive dinner. Shame you weren't feeling up to it," Everett added, without lifting his eyes from the sports section. "Claire really loved Thayer's direction. Very visionary." I smiled back. Tight. My mouth moved, but my heart had already stepped away from all of it. "I'm glad it went well," I said. Then I walked to the gift shop, bought a water I didn't need, and returned to the room. The laughter behind me felt thinner than usual. Back upstairs, I kicked off my shoes, set the water down untouched, and powered up my laptop. I didn't know what I was looking for yet, only that something itched, some wrongness beneath the surface that I'd ignored for too long. And if I had learned anything tonight, it was this. Nothing about this was random. I didn't sleep that night. The screen of my laptop glowed in the dark, painting soft blue on my skin as I clicked through folders, then old albums, then older ones. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for until I saw it. It was buried in a shared family drive. One Thayer's aunt had created years ago to keep memories in one place. The photo itself looked unremarkable at first. A group dinner, long wooden table, a soft-lit courtyard, people chatting, wine glasses raised. Until I looked again. Off to the side, near a potted plant, sat a woman alone. No plate in front of her, no one turned toward her. She wasn't laughing, she was just there. I zoomed in slowly. Her face came into view. Marcel, Thayer's ex-wife. I'd only seen a few pictures of her before, one from their wedding, which had been quietly buried in a storage box, another from an old social media post, long deleted. But this one was raw. I paused, then saved the image. As I clicked to enlarge it further, I noticed something strange. A note written on the back, in Callista's elegant cursive. "Too fragile for our family." I didn't move. For a second, it was like my entire chest had hollowed out. My fingers trembled slightly on the trackpad. This wasn't just habit. This was how they operated. I texted Juno. Me. Did Marcel ever talk about them? About how she was treated? There was no reply at first. I waited. A full 30 minutes passed before my phone buzzed again. Juno. Can you be alone for a bit? Me. I'm in my room. Another 20 minutes later, there was a soft knock on my door. I opened it to find no one, but there was an envelope lying just outside. My name, written neatly on the front. Inside, a folded letter. The paper slightly yellowed, ink smudged at the edges. It was from Marcel, never sent, never spoken about, but kept and passed on. Her handwriting was steady but tired. They never love anyone they can't control. That was the first line. As I read, the shape of everything I had experienced began to mirror hers. She wrote about sitting apart from the family, not being told about dinner plans, being called emotional when she voiced concern, told she was imagining things, the silent smiles, the controlled narrative, and then this. I should have run sooner. I hope whoever comes next doesn't stay as long as I did. By the time I finished reading, the sun was just beginning to trace light through the sheer curtains. I placed the letter on the desk, breathing in the silence. For the first time in days, my mind felt still. Not calm, but clear. They had done it before. They were doing it again. But the difference was, I wasn't her, and I wasn't finished. I reached for my laptop again, not to scroll mindlessly, but to work. I started reviewing every corporate document connected to the startup. Bank authorizations, contracts, booking receipts for this trip. Then our cap table. Who held what? How decisions had been logged. Who had spoken for me, and who hadn't. I checked the billing contact on our hotel booking. My name. The rental car? Mine. Spa? Charged to my account. The dinner Thayer used to impress Claire? Also mine. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was documenting. I copied Marcel's letter into a password-protected folder and labeled it clearly, just in case. Then I opened the latest pitch deck Thayer had sent to Claire. Not to be petty, not to fight, to prepare. The morning after I read Marcel's letter, I skipped breakfast. Instead, I walked through the resort paths, stone tiles hot under my sandals, the air already heavy with heat. I needed space to think. I needed to keep moving, because if I stopped, I might start feeling, and I didn't want that. Not yet. Around noon, Callista caught me by the pool. She wore her usual oversized sunglasses and a crisp linen cover-up, the kind only old money wore without irony. I nodded politely, expecting small talk, or maybe a veiled comment about how tired I looked. Instead, she gestured to the chair beside me and sat, crossing her legs with the kind of precision that said, I am always in control. I've been thinking, she started. For legal clarity, perhaps Thayer should hold the main corporate account, just on paper, Nothing changes. I turned slowly, letting the words sink in. For the business? I asked, already knowing the answer. She smiled. It's what any strong family business does. My hands gripped the arms of my chair. We're not a family business, I said, my voice even. We're a partnership, founded together, structured legally, managed jointly. She waved a hand lightly, like brushing away dust. Of course. It's just cleaner, less complicated for investors, especially when it's, well, family. I didn't respond. I just stood up, thanked her for her input, and walked away. Thayer said nothing during the exchange. He'd been sitting behind us, pretending to scroll his phone, but I knew he'd heard every word. And he hadn't spoken. Not once. Later that afternoon, as the sun dipped lower, casting amber over the desert, I returned to my suite. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on the balcony instead, trying to let the quiet do its job. That's when I heard voices below. Male. Familiar. I leaned forward slightly, careful not to be seen. Thayer and Everett sat at one of the courtyard tables. They each had a drink in hand. From this height, I could hear most of it. Once your name's on it, Everett said, we can restructure, make it cleaner, keep things streamlined. She won't like that, Thayer replied. Everett chuckled. She doesn't have to. I froze. They weren't discussing a suggestion. They were planning a removal, and not just from the business, but from control, from ownership, from her own creation, from my creation. I backed away from the balcony, hand gripping the sliding door. My stomach turned, not from shock, but from how unsurprised I was. I'd felt it coming. Now it had a voice. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring up at the ceiling fan, listening to its soft, rhythmic hum. My mind played reel after reel of everything I'd built, every late night, every pitch meeting, every deal I closed that Thayer took credit for because it made things easier. They weren't just rewriting the business, they were rewriting me out of it. I turned on the bedside lamp and grabbed my laptop again. I needed to act, but not emotionally, not recklessly. I'd seen where that got Marcel. They'd painted her as unstable, fragile, incapable. They wouldn't get that narrative with me. So I drafted a message, encrypted it, sent it to a secure account I rarely used. Subject line, Red Phase Protocol, activated. The morning came with music, not the kind you welcome. It drifted in through the patio doors, soft jazz from hidden speakers near the pool deck, Sunday brunch, family style, white linens, silver pitchers of orange juice, careful laughter arranged like centerpiece flowers. I didn't want to go, but staying in would have looked like avoidance. And right now, I needed to look composed. So I dressed, tied my hair back, and walked toward the terrace with a face that didn't match my mood. By the time I arrived, the table was half full. Thayer sat next to Callista. Everett poured himself another mimosa, already relaxed. Juno caught my eye and gave me a tentative nod, as if she wasn't sure where she was supposed to stand anymore. A server placed a plate in front of me. Eggs, fruit. I hadn't requested anything. I was reaching for the salt when it happened. A sharp yelp, then a splash of water. Everyone turned. Callista's nephew, maybe 5 or 6, had tripped near the edge of the pool. He wasn't hurt badly, but the scrape on his arm drew instant attention. He cried, held his elbow, and reached for Callista, who bent to inspect the bruise. And then came the dagger, smooth and subtle. I assumed Odessa was watching him, Callista said, still bent over. She's always so attentive when it's about her company. The table fell quiet. No one laughed. No one dared. I set my fork down. If you're going to insult me, I said, voice flat, do it directly. She straightened slowly, brushing non-existent lint from her dress. Why would I do that? She said, her tone sugar-sweet. We're family. I glanced at Thayer. He looked down at his plate, chewing slowly, as if he hadn't heard a thing. Juno reached for her napkin and squeezed it tight, her knuckles pale. I stood up without a word and left the table. Late that afternoon, I found a quiet corner by the gardens to breathe. The heat was heavy, pressing into the back of my neck. I took off my sandals and let my feet feel the warm stone beneath them. That's when Juno found me. She didn't say much, just handed me a bottle of water and sat beside me for a few minutes in silence. "She does it to everyone," Juno said finally. "The smile, the hints, the way she makes it seem like you're the problem." I nodded. "She's not subtle." Juno gave a short laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. That evening, I watched them from across the lounge. Callista whispered something to Juno and linked arms with her, leading her toward the private walkways behind the cabanas. They were gone for maybe 20 minutes. When Juno returned, her face looked changed, tight. She passed me on the way back to her room, didn't say anything, but her eyes caught mine just long enough. I understood. At dinner that night, the atmosphere had reset. Faux pleasantries, and a carefully arranged seafood platter. Callista poured herself a glass of white wine, made a joke about Florida humidity, and Thayer chuckled like it was all normal again. When the plates were cleared, I leaned forward slightly and said, just loud enough for her to hear, "Next time you come for me in public, bring more than a brunch tray." She blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I replied. "Keep testing me, I promise. I'll start playing your game. Just not by your rules." Her expression didn't change, but the grip on her wine glass tightened for a second. Everett looked between us. Thayer pretended not to notice. After dinner, I walked straight back to the room. No pauses, no distractions. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the desk, opened my laptop, and reviewed every reservation, booking, and line item connected to this trip. Every room was under my name. Every car. Every dinner. Then I started canceling. I stayed at the desk long after the last dinner plate had been cleared from the table downstairs. The lamp beside me cast a warm, focused circle of light on the wood grain. Outside the window, the resort glowed softly. Well-manicured silence, oblivious to the storm I was about to unleash. No second-guessing. No hesitations. I logged in. Room 403, Everett and Callista's, canceled first. A confirmation email hit my inbox before I even clicked the next tab. Room 407, Thayer's suite. Gone in under 15 seconds. Spa appointment under Callista's name for 10 a.m. Scratched from the system. Dinner for 6 at the Grove, reserved 3 months ago by me? Cancelled. Every table that night was now unavailable. I made sure of it. Rental SUV, revoked, no backup booking, no driver service, no concierge. They'd be lucky to find a taxi by noon. I paused, rolled my shoulders, then opened my own hotel profile. I shifted my reservation to a luxury suite at a boutique hotel in Santa Barbara. Same check-in day, 2 hours west. I booked it under my maiden name, just in case. I folded a piece of resort stationery in half, wrote a single line, and placed it neatly on the pillow of the bed I was leaving behind. Find your own ride. By the time I zipped my bag and walked out of the room, it was almost 2 a.m. The hallway lights hummed overhead, and the marble floors chilled my bare ankles. I rolled my suitcase behind me, soft wheels moving like they didn't want to wake the sleeping decorum. At the front desk, the night manager looked up with mild surprise. "Checking out early, Ms. Reed?" "Just changing the scenery," I said. "Can you make sure no further charges are applied to my card?" He nodded. "Of course. Would you like us to notify your family?" I met his eyes without blinking. "They'll figure it out." He didn't ask anything else, just handed me a copy of the zeroed-out folio and held the door open as I stepped into the cool desert night. The stars were still out as I pulled out of the circular driveway. I didn't play music. I didn't think, just drove. The further I got from Palm Springs, the quieter everything inside me became. At a rest stop past Indio, I parked beneath a dim lamppost and made myself stretch. My back cracked from the tension, but I didn't mind. I pulled my phone from my tote, found the draft I'd saved earlier. 2. Claire subject. Clarification on leadership roles. The body was short, measured, director. I read it once more, my thumb hovering over send. Not yet. I bought a coffee from a tired-looking vending machine, leaned against the hood of the car, and let the steam warm my face. Let them burn a little, I whispered, because by the time they realized what I had done, it would already be too late. By noon, my phone vibrated on the passenger seat. Unknown number, South Carolina area code. I answered, already knowing what it was. Ms. Reed? A calm voice asked. This is Officer Daniels with the Hilton Head Police Department. Your husband has filed a missing persons report. I pulled the phone from my ear slowly, setting it down on the table beside my half-empty coffee. The hum of the cafe near the highway blurred around me. Missing persons report. That's what Thayer had filed. I wasn't surprised, not really. But the official tone in Officer Daniels' voice, the careful way he'd asked if I was safe, it landed like a cold stone in my gut. I took a breath, then asked calmly, Officer, would you like me to clarify my location now? Yes, ma'am, if you're willing. I gave the address of the hotel in Santa Barbara. Then, before he could ask, I added, I left voluntarily. I'm not missing, and I would like to file a no-contact request. Immediately. He paused. I can initiate that for you, he said. Are you certain? I've never been more certain in my life. By the time I checked into the executive boardroom I'd rented, the sun had shifted just enough to cast long shadows across the polished floors. Bottled water lined the center of the table. Legal pads. Silence. It looked like a conference room, but it felt like a war room. I arranged the folders, documents, photos, timestamps, printed emails. My laptop sat open to the master spreadsheet. Every cancellation, every booking, every name that mattered. Then I waited. The door opened precisely 5 minutes past the hour. First came Thayer, his eyes dark under the fluorescent light. Then Callista and Everett, moving like they were walking into a courtroom, not a family meeting. Juno followed last, clutching her phone like it was armor. Thayer was the first to speak. What the hell is this? I didn't look up. A conversation. Since you're all so fond of having them behind my back, I thought we'd try it face to face. Callista crossed her arms. Dragging us across the state wasn't necessary. You'll see in a moment, I replied. I slid the photo of Marcel across the table. Then the letter. Then the printout of their Hilton Head booking, canceled. The spa. The restaurant. All of it. Their names. My credit card. My name behind the curtain. You humiliated us, Callista snapped. This was cruel. No, I said, voice quiet but steel-lined. You erased me. I just made it obvious. Thayer leaned back, his jaw tense. Everett said nothing. Juno stared down at the table. I tapped my laptop, opened an email log. All those investor calls you thought I didn't know about. I traced every change, every email Claire never saw, every pitch deck sent without my signature. I was trying to protect the business, Thayer said. From your wife? Silence. We built this together, I continued. You used me as a silent signature. A prop. Callista stepped in. That's enough. No, I cut her off. That's the problem. No one ever says that to you. I will. There was a break in the conversation. No one moved. My phone buzzed quietly beside me. It was a message. Unknown number. We see who's actually leading. Good for you. I didn't know which investor sent it, but I didn't need to. For the first time in days, I smiled. Not out of spite, not even out of triumph, just clarity. I looked up again, meeting every set of eyes in the room. Let's finish this, I said. They said nothing. I reached for the final document and slid it across the table. Then I leaned forward. Now, I said slowly, either you step back, or I make sure no one ever trusts you with $1 again. I woke earlier than usual. The meeting room had cleared the day before, but the tension hadn't left me until sometime after midnight. I'd showered, crawled into the unfamiliar bed of my Santa Barbara suite, and for the first time in a long while, slept without interruption. Now the morning light was painting soft stripes across the floor of my new office. A clean, sleek space, minimalist, quiet, glass walls that looked out over the Pacific. The kind of office I'd once imagined, back when Thayer and I were just scribbling startup ideas on napkins. On the glass door, my name was etched in gold, Odessa Renly, CEO. I stood by the window, a coffee warming my hands, watching waves roll in. Then the notification came. The subject line was simple: change of direction, effective immediately. Claire had written it herself. We're formally discontinuing all investment collaboration with Thayer Renly. Moving forward, our funding and equity interest will sit solely under Odessa Renly's leadership. Legal updates will follow within 24 hours. I reread the email. Not because I didn't believe it, because for the first time, I didn't have to. I replied with 3 words. Acknowledged. Thank you. There was no trembling in my fingers, no lingering doubt, just the steady rhythm of breath returning to a body that had been clenched for far too long. I let the moment sit. Across the room, the framed photo of my first patent hung on the wall. Below it, the original mission statement I'd written alone on a hotel notepad years ago. Back when they said I was too idealistic. Back when Callista called it naive ambition. A vibration from my phone broke the stillness. Juno. Juno. Callista's losing her mind, screaming at the kitchen staff like they're shareholders. I smiled. Me. Let her scream. Not my kitchen. Juno. Thayer hasn't come out of his apartment. Me. Took him long enough? There was a pause. Then, Juno. You did it. I looked at her message. My fingers hovered, then typed back. Me. We did it. You told me the truth. That matters. There were so many things I could have said, but in the end, that was all that needed saying. I sat down at the desk, not across from anyone, not beside anyone, at the head. Boots off, feet up. A woman at ease in her own skin, her own seat. I called Evan, our lead engineer. Morning, he answered, his voice scratchy from coffee or lack of sleep. It's go time, I said. We're rebuilding the whole interface, under my name, under my rules. He didn't ask for confirmation. He knew. I've been waiting for this, he said. Me too. As we hung up, I glanced again at the name on the door. Odessa Renly. Not an extra seat, not a placeholder. The chair that had always been mine. Before logging off for the day, I clicked open one final folder. A photo, an old family picture from 3 years ago. Taken during a vacation I barely remembered enjoying. Everyone was smiling, and there, in the corner of the frame, was a chair at the end of the table. Empty. I didn't delete it, I just closed the file. 2 weeks had passed. Not dramatically, not loudly. They passed the way good healing does. Gradually, almost unnoticed, until you realize you're breathing differently. I woke up to the sound of distant seagulls and the familiar hum of traffic below. My apartment wasn't fancy. It didn't need to be. It was mine. Light poured through gauzy curtains. A breeze carried the salt of the ocean through the open windows, rustling the leaves of the little basil plant I hadn't managed to kill yet. The place was small. 2 rooms, warm wood floors, the kind of kitchen where you couldn't stretch your arms too wide. But everything in it had a purpose, and none of it had been picked out by Callista. My inbox was full, contracts to review, new partnership proposals to consider. But I didn't rush. There was no calendar controlled by anyone else. No voice in the next room asking, "Did you send that pitch yet?" No mild suggestion disguised as strategy. No veiled demand wrapped in etiquette. Just quiet, mine. Around mid-morning, Juno knocked, as she'd promised. She carried 2 coffees and a smirk that didn't quite hide the satisfaction on her face. "Morning," she said, handing me the better cup, because she knew the difference. I raised an eyebrow. "You're smiling like you've got something juicy." She didn't even pretend to hesitate. Callista's been pulled from 2 board seats. Word about the investor meeting got around. I sat down slowly, careful not to let my face twist into anything celebratory. And Thayer? I asked. Juno shrugged. Trying to raise capital. Alone. So far, no one's biting. I nodded. Good, she added, quieter now. I mean, it's good, right? I looked out the window, past the rooftops, toward the curve of the coastline. I hope they figure it out, I said. I really do. Juno blinked. You don't hate them? I let the question hang. Then, I met her eyes. I'm done carrying them. She didn't respond for a moment, but she didn't have to. That was the thing about Juno. She understood the weight behind words, even the quiet ones. She left not long after. We didn't hug, just a nod, a small smile, a promise to keep moving. Later that afternoon, as I was sorting through my files, a message popped up on my screen. The name stopped me cold for a beat. Thayer. I see it now. I'm sorry. I never deserved you. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I stared at the words for what they were. A quiet admission, years too late. Then I clicked delete. Not because I was angry, because there was nothing else left to say. I opened a drawer in the desk and pulled out the family photo from the trip 3 years ago, the one with the empty chair. For a moment, I traced the edges of it with my finger. Then I slid it into the back of the drawer, not to erase it, just to stop staring. Some scars don't vanish, but they fade when you stop picking at them. That evening, as the sky cooled into lavender and blue, I stepped out onto the rooftop of my building. Barefoot, mug in hand, wind brushing through my hair. The city moved quietly below me. The ocean kept breathing, and I stood still, centered in something I had built with no one's permission but my own. They tried to silence me, I whispered. Now they hear me in every room they enter. A chime from my phone. New message, new partner pitch, clean slate. I smiled, turned, and walked back inside. Then I closed the door. I used to think that staying quiet meant keeping the peace, that if I smiled enough, bent just right, gave them what they wanted, they'd let me belong. But the truth is, silence doesn't earn you respect. It just makes it easier for people to erase you. This wasn't just about one vacation. It was about years of being told I was too much or not enough, never exactly right. If you're watching this and you've ever felt that way, let me say this. You are not difficult. You are not overreacting. You are just finally done shrinking. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stop explaining yourself. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever felt like you were being slowly pushed out of your own story? Or maybe you had a moment where you stood up and everything changed? Tell me your city, tell me your story, or just drop a if this hit home. And hey, if this video moved you, made you feel seen, or simply made you pause, comment a 1 below, or tell me where in the world you're watching from. If you didn't connect with it, I'd still love to know why. Let's talk. If you want more stories like this, raw, real, and rooted in resilience, hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us keep sharing voices that matter.